Okay, Simply Home partners, we're going to go ahead and get started here. We're going to do some light housekeeping first. Thank you all for your responses to our newsletter this month. You have seen in that we are going to focus our topic this month on the shift in healthcare's model of care. We have Susanna Tebby-Davis with us from Homewatch Caregivers, and she's going to enlighten us on all the nuts and bolts of home care and how we can work with home care agencies to collaborate and use technology through their services. So we recently sent out a newsletter that had our year in review, and we've seen that lots of you have viewed that video. Hopefully that was helpful to you. We literally sat down and took out what we thought were the most important points from each webinar from the past year. So if you haven't had a chance to watch each of those individually, this is a good video to get caught up on where we are now. So please take the time to watch that and give us your feedback. We do appreciate it. One other thing we mentioned in the newsletter was this change that Gmail has had, and being that we're using eye contact for our newsletters, you can see that this is the promotions tab that it's going to be automatically dumped into. So in order for these newsletters to show up in your regular primary email feed, you just simply need to go into promotions, find one of our newsletters, and drag it over this little folder here. And from there on out, you will be able to see our newsletters in your main feed. So if you have a Gmail account, please go ahead and do that so you don't miss our monthly newsletters and anything else that comes up new with Simply Home. We also started this month the new monthly tech tip, which we're going to have Jason Ray, the VP of Product Development, be the face of that. So he sat down with us and we literally brainstormed about what are the most prominent problems that we're getting through customer service and what are we troubleshooting the most and how can we help customers get through that with our help and on their own as well. So the first topic that we took upon ourselves this month was just basically how to reconnect your system when it comes disconnected. There are two main things to focus on, the power and the internet connection. So we're going to watch that video now if you didn't have a chance to watch it. And then we're going to go into talking to Susanna about home care. So give me just 1 second and I'll pull the video up.
Hi, I'm Jason Ray with Simply Home with today's Tech Tip. One of the most common support calls we get here at Simply Home is when your system becomes disconnected. As a part of your monthly service, your system is monitored for connecting to our servers, and if your system is disconnected for more than 5 minutes, you should get an alert saying that your system is no longer sending in information. The two most common problems we see with your system becoming disconnected are a loss of power to any of your devices or a loss of your internet connection. To start with, we have two different models of our Butler system. We have our tabletop version, which is in this plastic case here, and then a wall-mounted version in this metal case here. All the components inside are identical, but they look a little bit different. The one major difference is that on the wall-mounted version, the router is actually inside the box, as you'll see here, versus on the tabletop version, it's outside. So you have the Simply Home base unit. You have a router that is provided by Simply Home, which could look like this. It could also be black, so there's a couple different versions of this, but it's the unit that's actually directly connected to your Simply Home base unit. And then finally, you have the modem, and this is provided by your internet service provider. The way to identify this box is that it will be directly connected to either a phone jack or a cable jack in your wall. As you can see with this version right here, this is a DSL modem provided by AT&T. You'll see on the back a green DSL cable that's actually plugged into a phone jack here in our office. And then you'll also see the ports on the back for connecting your provided Simply Home router. The first thing to do is actually check the power to all these devices. So what you're going to want to do is, the easiest way to check that is look for lights on any of the devices. So you can see here in the front of the modem, we have a few lights showing here. Same thing on the front of our router. And then if you were to look on your Simply Home unit, there's a status light right here that should be blinking red. every couple of seconds. If you don't have lights on any of those devices, you're going to want to go and find whatever power source it's connected to. If that's a power strip, make sure the power strip's on, make sure everything's plugged securely into the wall before you move on. But you will need to make sure that all the devices are properly powered on before moving to the next step. That next step will be checking your internet connection. And the first part of that is making sure you have an active internet connection. Oftentimes we find out that internet connections have been shut off or no longer active. So the thing you want to do is go to your modem, provided by your internet service provider. Look at the lights on the front. They're a little bit different between cable and DSL, but you're going to want to check the internet connection light. If it's red or not lit up, like you see here, both our DSL and our internet lights are not lit up because it's not connected. That would mean that you have no service on this part of the link, and you're going to want to contact your internet service provider to get that resolved. But if you have a solid internet connection on your cable modem or DSL modem, you're going to want to then make sure your wiring configuration is all set up properly. To do that, simply turn your modem around, and you'll see in this case we have the incoming connection over here from the wall, which again can either be in a cable jack or a phone jack. And then we have some available ports here to plug in Ethernet cables. It could be 1 or it could be up to 4 or 5 like you see here. You can plug into any of these devices, but you're going to want to make sure that your router provided by Simply Home is plugged into one of these ports. And then looking at the router provided by Simply Home, you're going to want to make sure that that wire coming from the modem is plugged into the internet port, which is blue here. It's also sometimes labeled as WAN, W-A-N. You're going to want to make sure that the incoming connection from your modem is plugged into that port, which on this device is labeled WAN or internet. Once you've confirmed that, you're going to want to make sure that your base unit is connected properly. You'll see this white wire that we have here plugged into one of the available local area connection ports, which are shown in yellow here. It goes over to the Simply Home base unit. And to check the connection on this, you're just going to have to open up the box. On the middle unit, it is a locked unit, and it just swings open, but you'll need the keys to get into it. On the plastic unit, which is 4 screws, 1 in each corner. Loosen those, pull the cover off. You should find the Ethernet cable, which is this white cable here. Could also be yellow or blue, but you find the incoming wire coming in, and it should be plugged in securely to this black box on the top of the unit here. So make sure that's all connected in securely. And if you've checked all your connections, you've checked your power, you've made sure that you have internet service, and your system is still not connected, you're going to want to power cycle all the components of your system. And this is one thing that it does matter the order that you do this in. So we're going to want to start with the modem, again, provided by your internet service provider. Simply unplug it, and instead of fumbling around behind a piece of furniture to find out where it's plugged into the wall, just simply unplug it from the back of the unit, leave it unplugged for about 10 seconds, plug it back in, and now you're going to want to wait about 30 seconds to let this device fully restart before moving on to the next step. Once the cable modem is fully restarted, move on to the router. On the back of the router, same thing, unplug it, leave it unplugged for about 10 seconds, plug it back in. Once again, give it about 30 seconds to fully restart before moving on to the next step. After that 30 seconds has passed, again, go to your base unit. And right next to where the wires are coming in the bottom of the unit, you'll find a black switch right here. Simply switch that off. Again, leave it off for about 5 or 10 seconds. Switch it back on. You should see all the lights come back on inside. And then you're going to want to go and check the connection of your system. You should receive an alert within 5 to 10 minutes that your system's back connected if that did the trick. You can also see that happen pretty quickly online if you log into your account. If you still have trouble getting your system connected after you've gone through these steps, please contact our customer support team at 877-684-3581, or you can also open a support ticket online once you log into the site. Thanks a lot.
Okay, so that will probably not be the last time that you see that tech tip. We're actually going to be using that. Well, seen that one before. That video is actually, we're going to use that link on the notifications that go out when your customer systems are disconnected. So in addition to the written instructions that they're going to get on how to reconnect their system, they're also going to have the video option too. So that's just an FYI for you there. And now let me go into the introduction of Susanna. Let me get this set up. There we go. Hopefully you had a chance to read her full bio in the newsletter, but if you didn't, Susanna has been involved in the health and human services profession for over 30 years. She holds a BA in psychology from UMass and a master's in social work at UConn with a focus on community organization. Susanna has always served in an advocacy role, starting with active participation in the deinstitutionalization movement for individuals with mental illness and developmental disabilities, and volunteering on boards of directors and community organizations, which is right up the alley of what Simply Home does as well. She believes that we all thrive and grow together when we can live in a community with a strong, diverse, intergenerational network of support. Today, Susanna is committed to the vision, the mission, the aim, and the core commitments of Homewatch Caregivers, which is a home care agency serving Western North Carolina. And in addition to the work that she does with Homewatch Caregivers, on a personal note, I see Susanna as a leader in our community. Just to name a few groups that Simply Home is a part of, there's the Professional Social Workers in Long-Term Care and a Western North Carolina Resource Network meeting that Susanna serves an integral role of and is the leader of those groups, so it's been a pleasure to get to know her through those organizations. So we thought our partners could benefit from bringing her in and learning what the basic role of home care plays in individuals trying to age in place. We talk a lot about how technology plays a role in that, but another integral part of that is home care and the services that they provide that technology can't provide. So, Susanna, I welcome you. Thank you for being here with us today. Hopefully I didn't leave anything out, but we're excited to have this conversation with you and hopefully are able to learn from it at the end. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
We want to first just start and dive right in with the nuts and bolts of home care. Can you tell us, for those of us that are in different lines of business and work who are still helping the aging population or folks with disabilities, what is home care?
There's a distinction when an individual is needing some care in their residence, whether that be living in their own private home, in a facility such as assisted living, and finding that in order to remain in place, that they need some extra support. There are two types of support. One is home health care and the other is home care. Home health care is generally if an individual, say, has had a hip replacement and is going home and is going to need some nursing follow-up, some physical therapy, maybe some occupational therapy, and the doctor will order home health care. That is skilled care. It's a separate licensing process and generally involves care from licensed individuals such as nurses and physical therapists who deliver a prescribed treatment plan for a limited amount of time over a limited amount of weeks. Home care, by contrast, is non-medical care. In the state of North Carolina, regulation permits up through the level of a certified nursing assistant. And that care encompasses anything from companionship for someone who has no friends, who is lonely or depressed, has no socialization, maybe their family is living far away, all the way up through certified nursing care. So if there's some need for wound care or positioning, repositioning, doing transfers, bathing, the more skilled doing tests for diabetes, insulin levels, or blood pressure, those kinds of more skilled tasks. And that allows there to be more eyes on when an individual starts to become more fragile and easily could, for instance, have a fall or a medical crisis and be undetected and end up in hospital or worse.
So does the process normally, if someone has an incident, they go to the hospital, they are discharged, and home health care comes in the home for a certain period of time, who then refers a home care agency? Or can it be a variation of that? I mean, can someone, if a family knows what they want, they can call you guys right away? How does that process work? How does
There are a number of things that happen. The first scenario in the hospital generally is that there are discharge planners, they're social workers or nurses in the hospital setting, and they will come and visit the patient prior to discharge, and if there is home health care required or any kind of medical follow-up, they will arrange that so it is in place when the patient returns home.
Mm-hmm.
Once the patient comes home, a home health company might find that they're requiring more care than is needed. For instance, if the treatment plan is a bath 2 times a week and a blood pressure check, perhaps that individual also needs some help with cooking or getting to doctor's appointments or taking care of the home.
Mm-hmm.
They can then refer the family to us. A family is living out of state and they see that on visits mom and dad are starting to fail. There might be some confusion, their driving capacity might not be what it used to be, maybe they've had some falls, and they'll begin to research home care. Or a facility such as independent living or assisted living, which are generally part of what is known as a CCRC, or continuing care residential community, trying to allow an individual to stay and age in place in their home. Say they own or rent a home that is part of the facility grounds and they're starting to fail. They're not quite at the level where they need assisted living or skilled nursing. They refer to us for home care so that they can stay in place as long as possible.
Very good. So there's 3 main scenarios on how the customers come to you, is either through the hospital after being discharged,
Mm-hmm.
through the family who's just researching for someone who may need some assistance, or for someone who's already in a facility such as a CCRC.
Yes, or there might be a case, for instance, where the Council on Aging in this state, which is a private nonprofit organization that takes care of the needs of elders,
Mm-hmm.
may see someone who is at risk.
Mm-hmm.
Part of their investigation or their review, they believe that that individual's risk could be significantly lessened by support. They'll refer to us as well.
Okay. And so we mentioned that in the beginning a little bit about Homewatch Caregivers being here in Western North Carolina. Can you tell us specifically about Homewatch, how long you've been with them, and
Sure.
about the business in general?
Homewatch Caregivers has been, we're in our 4th year in Western North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
The owner of Homewatch Caregivers is a man named Paul Sauer, and actually this is the oldest home care company in the country. So he started it over 45 years ago. He's now over 80, and it started as a house-sitting business. And as he began doing house-sitting, people would say, well, could you walk Spotty, my dog, while we're gone, or then that morphed into, can you take care of Aunt Mabel? And
yeah,
so Homewatch was born. And I think in keeping with the model that he started, his daughter is now the CEO. His eldest daughter is the president and CEO of Homewatch International, or an international franchise. And his youngest daughter operates a branch in Denver, Colorado. So the company is very based on compassion and heartfelt care for elders, for people aging in place. And when Brenda and Ernie Concoli, who are the owners of this branch, started looking into going into this field, they had to go through a very significant vetting process and a number of interviews by different members of the Homewatch team before they were accepted. So Homewatch believes in heartfelt care. In this, our branch operates under the 6 Dimensions of Wellness, which is a national model started by holistic nurses and physicians that says that you look at all aspects of an individual when you're looking at home care or any kind of care, not only the physical, but the occupational, the spiritual, the emotional, the social, and the intellectual.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we do an assessment of an individual, we try to fold in all of those aspects, because we believe that it's by looking at the whole person that we can maintain the best level of health.
Very good. And nationwide, you serve folks of all ages. Is that the same for Homewatch here locally?
We do specialize in working with elders. However, we have served individuals in their 40s and 50s who might have a degenerative disease such as muscular dystrophy. We work with people who have cancer through hospice. So our specialty is working with seniors, and our average clients are in their 80s.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings me into the question of what is a typical customer? What does that look like for you, or is there one?
Mm-hmm. So we're seeing some trends. We're seeing an increase in early onset Alzheimer's and dementia, and often with people who don't have the means to enter a facility that specializes in care for Alzheimer's or dementia, or they have family that's far away. They're just falling through the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing that. We're seeing people who have lost a spouse. Maybe someone's been married for 60 years and they lose a spouse, and now they're failing,
mm-hmm.
and they really don't want to leave their home. They come to us for care. Or perhaps it's a couple that's aging,
mm-hmm.
and they don't want to leave their home, but it's not safe for them to drive. One of them may have or both may have a disease process. There are memory issues. And really often there are memory issues. And then along with that, as people are aging, they're not taking care of themselves as well as they could. So they have dehydration, or they have urinary tract infections, or they have issues with their blood pressure, or they're just not getting the proper nutrition. So for all those reasons, people turn to home care. And for I would say what's fairly common is for the person themselves, there's often a lot of fear and distrust. You know, I think that living in the South and in the more rural communities and in these families who have been in the South for many years, there is a trust with family and with long-term neighbors, and sometimes that just isn't available. And so people are really afraid to hire someone to provide their care. And couple that with, if someone's having some dementia, they may accuse a staff person of stealing or you know, make up stories. So there's a lot of fear involved, and just the knowledge that one is aging and facing their own mortality.
Yeah. So how do you gain that trust? How do you get past that barrier?
I think that our philosophy is that we look at all of our clients as extended family. Ernie and Brenda Concoli, who are the owners, are a very hands-on couple who are working 24/7. They're childhood sweethearts. They are very, very dedicated to compassionate care for elders. Ernie is known to any time of the day or night. If someone, for instance, has an appliance that goes on the fritz, he was an engineer in a former career. He'll be there. He'll be there fixing it. He won't charge the person. He's just there. We had a 99-year-old lady who passed away this weekend, and we've been serving her for 4 years, and her family is not here. And Brenda sat with her for hours through that transition process. So
wow.
I think that it's that level of caring. It's that we make sure that none of our clients have a meal alone on a holiday.
Mm-hmm.
Just knowing them. Brenda often says she knows we have over 50 clients, but she says she can tell you what every client takes in their coffee, and it's true. So I think it's that level of really seeing who the individual is and then meeting them where they are and advocating for them.
And being there.
And being there that gains their trust.
Awesome. So other than, being referred, how can a family find you? If I'm a daughter living in another state and my mother lives here in Hendersonville, how do I find you?
Well, certainly we're listed with United Way, which if you're not familiar with 211, and I'm not sure if that's a national piece of United Way, 211 is like 411, and I believe most United Ways have that, and if you call 211, they can give you resources for pretty much anything you're looking for, and that includes home care. We also are listed with the Councils on Aging here, with Memory Care, which is a facility that works with individuals who are diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's or dementia, and the Land of Sky, which is a local resource.
So you found those organizations to be extremely helpful.
They're extremely helpful, and then as we go out in the community and work in collaboration and partnership with other home and home health care providers, we build relationship and we all work together. And it's a part of Western North Carolina that I really love, is that I think all of the providers I've met are so invested in working collaboratively so that we can best serve our aging population.
And what I've heard from you is that your goal as Homewatch Caregivers and as home care in general is to keep people safe and independent and in their own homes, which is exactly what Simply Home tries to do. So we want to emphasize to our partners how important it is to seek partnerships and collaborations with organizations like yourself, because you do have the same goals that we have, and we can't do it alone without you. So
we feel the same way, and with people's limited resources, there is a great need to merge and partner with collaboratives such as Simply Home, work with volunteer agencies, work with the faith community, and with facilities, because there comes a point with some of our clients when it's dangerous for them to stay at home, and they really do need to go into a facility, and we're there when that happens and we help with the transition.
Right. We talked about a couple of the challenges that you face with home care now. Can you talk a little bit about those, being maybe the recruitment and retention and then the funding too? What would you say the biggest challenge? I don't want to put words into your mouth, but what are the biggest challenges that you're facing in home care?
I think we're all facing the challenge of a rapidly aging population with the baby boomers. And along with that, what people might not think about is the fact that we have had an explosion of, in this country, children who have autism or Asperger's syndrome and are now aging out. The mental health resources for people have really dramatically decreased. And so what might have been available 10, 15 years ago for someone as they are aging is simply not there anymore. We're a more mobile society, so families aren't as local as they were. And with the economic downturn, families don't have the resources or the time that they used to have to care for a loved one. And we see a decline in faith community population as well. So niches that congregations used to fill are not as evident as they used to be. So those they present tremendous challenges. I co-chair this Western Carolina Senior Resource community, and I was telling them about the church that I belong to has circles of care volunteers, and they help provide some of the companion needs for people who are going through an illness or crisis, and that we've seen so much cancer in the last 6 months, some of which is with people who have no family here, and that it's really burnt out the volunteers because they just can't be there every day for extended amounts of hours to cook a meal or to go to a doctor's appointment, or certainly not to provide if somebody needs a bath or wound care. So those are tremendous challenges, and on the labor side of it, with the reimbursement rates and with service fees in order to keep them affordable, I think we're pretty proud that we're very competitive in how much we pay our staff. We're not in a position to be able to afford to give them health care benefits, and that's true for most home care companies and most direct care agencies. So and there are many of us here with these growing populations, so we all are competing for a limited pool in the labor market. And many people in their 20s and 30s don't want to do direct care. They don't want to go into health professions. They want to go into technology or business.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a shrinking labor pool to deal with a growing population of people aging, and that's one of the things I think is so valuable with Simply Home and the services that you provide, is that it becomes absolutely essential to have that niche.
Yeah. And when it comes to funding both your services and ours, if a family needs care 24/7, it could be expensive. It could get expensive. But people want to stay in their homes. So how does that compare to going to a facility versus, is it more affordable if you only need a couple hours of your services, or do you see a lot of folks that need your services that really do need 20-plus hours of someone being there? Is that more common?
I would say that that's more common, and I would say there will be a growing amount of cases where we can bridge that gap using community resources, working with agencies such as Simply Home and our services to allow that person to stay in place.
Okay.
For an on-call system, for instance, it may be fine for us to go in and do a meal. We have a gentleman who's getting out of rehab in another 2 weeks, and he was fine before he had a series of strokes, and he's now much weaker. He's in his 80s. His wife died last year, and his daughter wants someone to make meals for the week. Mm-hmm. And maybe go in a few times a week. Well, he's weak. He's going to need to be monitored. So a call system that would monitor for if he has falls, or a medication reminder system will help him in terms of being able to stay in his home.
Okay.
At an affordable price.
So from a business perspective, though, what caused the shift that we're talking about now, the shift? And, to us it makes sense to use technology for a portion of the time, use your services for the other portion that technology can't replace. But how do you say, basically, somebody comes into your dealership and wants a Toyota, and you say, no, you can't afford this, go get a Subaru, for example? How is that profitable for your business? Is it just the all-encompass mentality to say, we're going to offer you any service that you need, whether it's ours or not, and you're finding that customers appreciate that? Or, what is it about that shift?
I think it's the same. It's relationship and reputation, and I think it's the same. I was just talking about my automobile mechanic yesterday, and how you never can find a parking space in his garage because he's so busy. And it's because if you go in thinking that you need a new alternator and he tells you that you don't, yeah, he's turned away that particular piece of business, but he's gained the loyalty of a customer for life who has referred countless other people to him. And that's why we do it, and it's not just for the business aspect. It's, Ernie was saying the other day, it's a way for us all to look at our own mortality when we work with someone who's aging, to be compassionate, to be kind, and to hope that when we are in that same place that we will find the same kind of support. Mm-hmm. So it's not about the dollar. Certainly we have to remain fiscally viable. Mm-hmm. And that, I don't think any of us foresaw the severity of the economic downturn in 2008, and it shifted the playing field. It simply shifted the playing field.
So what was that conversation like? I know since I've been here at Simply Home, of course, our business started in developmental disabilities and providing technology for those individuals, and aging has not been the focus in the beginning. But for us now, we're finding that more home care agencies see the value in technology. What was the conversation like for your agency to say, maybe we should, open up a little bit here and see what other tools are out there?
I think it was just simply looking at our individuals as individuals and saying, you know, Mr. Jones needs some companionship. He has some neighbors that can look in on him. He has us to make him a meal. He has us to help him with his health care schedule. And there's some risk for some hours in between, but he doesn't really need someone 24/7. He will dramatically decrease his risk of falls or of confusion or of remembering to take his medication if he could just have some technology in place.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a smart decision. I think it's a smart business decision for us, and I think it's an invaluable resource that we can offer our clients and their families.
Very good. So when we are determining some of these gaps and moving towards more of a reactive versus a proactive, we hope, because you face the same challenges that we do with families procrastinating, having to educate people first about what it is that you offer, what funding is available for what you offer, and things like that. How do you overcome those obstacles?
The more we can be in relationship with each other as professionals, the more we're in a position when somebody calls us afraid or panicking that we can say, this is what we can offer, and here are also some other resources that we can point you in the direction of. Let's get a hold of it. When a person's going to need more than just companionship, by regulation, we have a nurse who goes in and does a medical assessment. So we can sit down with a medical professional and an owner or whoever the assessor is and say, here's an overall picture of mom and dad's needs, and this is what they need. And because we're geared that way and because we have very active owners, we can go in often within 24 hours because you're right, we often get cases that are emergent.
Yeah. The relationships that you have in the community based off of referrals, are there contracts that you sign and you become partners and similar to what Simply Home does, or is it off of a friendship? Like, how does that work if you're working with like a home health care agency, for example?
Almost all agencies will operate on a client choice posture. In other words, if I'm a social worker, Mr. Jones is going to be discharged and his fun is up, I will give him 2 or 3 brochures of home care companies that I think he might like to contact. Now, the relationship is that I might know the social worker very well, and she's referred other clients to us before, and she sees what a beautiful job we do in taking care of people. So we will be one of the 3 people she refers to.
So if you don't have a relationship with that discharge agent, how do you get on that list? Or is it an ever-growing challenge?
You build relationships. You do teaching. We've done staff development. We've taught stress management at no cost for social workers and direct care staff. We have a university that is an online university which offers CEUs and also is geared towards family caregivers. So we offer that, and we try to take...
Is that a free of charge?
It's a free service. It costs us, but we don't pass that cost on. So people get to see not only the level of service we can provide, but the level of educational service that they can get from us. Because we want our staff, and we want the community, and we want our consumers to be well informed.
Very good. So again, a little bit more on the collaboration, and one of the topics discussed at one of the recent marketing meetings that I went to here locally was how we can collaborate better and support each other in filling in those service gaps. When exactly did this shift happen from competitors to collaborators?
Well,
or is it still a process?
I think that this field, and I think it's Western North Carolina, I think we all realize, or most of us, that we serve the community better when we come from a place of collaboration. And that if we operate out of fear or competition, then everyone loses, and it doesn't even work for the business in the long run because you don't make smart business decisions. The group that I co-lead started as a branch from our marketers group, which is larger. We have anywhere from 15 to 25 people a month. And we felt like we see each other a number of different times in the community. Let's branch out and begin having conversations with faith communities, with nonprofits, who are so overwhelmed and who are dealing with their own issues of dwindling resources, who don't have time to see 20 of us individually, but who would perhaps welcome one or two of us coming in a group and educating the congregation or the volunteers as to what's available out in the community. And that's a win for us, too, because it means we don't have to spend our time going to 20 different places when we could go to 2 or 3 and, again, present as a group.
Very good.
And the more we do that outreach, the more educated we become as well as what are the needs of the community.
And who to refer to as well when you need something else.
Yeah. And there are, with some of the recent Medicare regulations for reimbursement, there are needs and requirements to assess people's functioning levels, their activities of daily living, what skill level they're at, which are, and not enough monitors at the state level to review these cases. So what is happening in some of the facilities is that there's a wait list when a bed becomes available and when they are approved by the state for funding. So they are beginning to refer to agencies like both of ours for people who are on that wait list who really aren't safe to be in their home, but there's no place for them to go.
Wow.
And that's going to, I think, increase.
Well, let's move into talking a little bit about, I know we're almost at an hour here, so maybe we can talk a little bit about our collaboration. I know it's still in the works, and we've sat down with both you and Ernie, and we've come up with how we feel is a good way to move forward. One of the things that we do very similar is our assessment. So I think we've worked through how we would assess a customer who could benefit from technology, or a family who wants 24/7 care but can't afford 24/7 care, and how we're going to move forward with that. So what are your thoughts on where we are in that process?
I think we're in a really exciting beginner stage where we're collecting data, and from our first cases we can take a look at what did people find attractive about this collaboration, what might have not been attractive to them, and what can we do like these other collaboratives in going on joint speaking engagements, doing educational pieces. I think we both have newsletters, so how can we publicize this information to the greater population? And as we begin and further our collaboration, we can tell stories, because that's how people really relate best to anyway. So where can we point to success stories and find people who are willing to give testimonials or to be interviewed, so that there are real live bodies that someone who's afraid and is aging and looking for support can say, oh yeah, this worked for him.
I think that's a great point, because we can't, you know, from our perspective, we can't sell technology as just technology, but we can sell technology as a story, and the more stories you have, the better people can relate to those stories. Technology is not going to be able to replace what a human can do. That's never going to happen as far as I'm concerned. So being able to collaborate and work together, I think, benefits the individual and the family.
Yeah, and conversely, I think that technology can allow an individual to feel a greater degree of independence and dignity than having to have a body in the home during all his or her waking hours when it's not really needed. Because it's challenging enough to face all of those issues of suffering and aging and loneliness. So technology can play a wonderful role in allowing a person to keep their dignity and to keep some control over their life.
We've certainly heard a lot of stories of, you know, home care agencies having to stay through the night with an individual who may not want someone that they're not quite comfortable with in their home yet. Is that true? I mean, have you seen that? Do you get a lot of kickback from having to have someone in the home when someone just feels like they just want to sleep, or do they accept that help?
It really depends, and again, I think it is often an issue of fear and losing control. And I don't think I'd want somebody in the room with me or in the house watching me sleep or monitoring me if I were otherwise healthy, just for fear that something might happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we talked a lot about how you market and how you work in all aspects of the community, but let's just touch a little bit more on, is this a nationwide shift in marketing, a collaboration, or is it starting here? What have you seen in that? And how will you move forward with marketing, not only in collaboration with Simply Home, but with other agencies? Is that part of your pitch now? Is that part of who you are as a company?
Yeah, I would say that in my years of service that I've been fortunate to always work in collaboration. And I think it's, you know, when you come from a place of collaboration, that's what you draw. And certainly I'm biased, and I think that Western North Carolina is the best place in the world to live, and that I see collaboration in all areas of my life with people. So I think that there is a really strong desire for return to community, for support of community, for recognizing that there are so many complex issues that face us in all aspects of our life that can only be solved through collaboration and not competition. So I see it as, for us, the only viable business model.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you handle the competition of the employees? I know that pool is dwindling, and although we are collaborating, from a home care agency perspective, how do you say, oh, this one's mine, that one's yours, or I want that one?
Yeah.
Is that a problem?
I think that it's common because the nature of home care is such that you may have a person you're working with 40 hours a week, and then they go into a facility or they die, and so now you need a new case. And there's not always, we're a smaller agency or mid-sized agencies, we don't always have someone right away to fill that gap. So
that's interesting. I haven't thought about it that way.
Yeah, it's fairly common for...
It's just a matter of finding work, really.
Yeah, so it's fairly common for caregivers to work for more than one agency at a time. Then again, I think that all agencies, like any other company, have different cultures, and that it's a matter of what our screening processes and our interview process and who we are will draw a different kind of person than a large corporation. We've had people come to us as caregivers who are great caregivers who have worked in nursing homes, and they may be fine nursing homes, but to work with a high patient-to-staff ratio is really physically tiring. It's not as rewarding, and so they want to work with a small agency. And then again, we have most of our caregivers are over 45 years old, so they either have some other kind of income coming in, or they just don't need to work full-time anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think if you take anything away from this webinar is to know that technology and home care are moving in the direction of working together. So, and not just here in Western North Carolina, but everywhere. So there is an importance to get this information out to home care agencies to start working towards collaboration. So, Susanna, I thank you for being here with us. Is there anything that we haven't gotten to talk about that?
I would reiterate that as baby boomers age, this generation is much more savvy about technology. So I think they'll be much less afraid and more willing to embrace technology to allow them to maintain the best quality of life possible.
Yeah, and that's what we're all about, and we're excited to hear that and excited to move forward and excited to work with you guys. So I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll see you next month. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.